Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's virtual plant clinic. As always, I'm just going to pause for a moment while we let everybody start getting logged in. Let me make sure I've got your chat enabled, and then I'll go ahead and get us started. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to this afternoon's virtual plant clinic. Happy spring, everybody. Today, David is going to be covering vegetables. So just a couple of notes for anybody who might be new. As always, welcome back to those of you who are our regular attendees, and to anybody who's new today. Just a quick note, since this is a Zoom webinar, we can't hear you or see you during the class. David does take questions during the class. You'll use your Q&A box. It's on your Zoom menu. Type your questions there, and then at certain points during the presentation, we'll be taking questions, and then at the end, David has a Q&A segment for this. We are recording, so if you have to leave at any point, the recording will generally become available about 24 hours after the class on our YouTube channel. So feel free, if you have to leave, go ahead and leave, and it'll be available tomorrow. And if we are not able to get to all of your questions today, I'll remind you all of this, but as always, please feel free to follow up with us, and we can help you out after the class. We get to as many questions as we can, and we cover all of them whenever possible, but just be aware that sometimes there's too many people for that. So with that, I think that's all, David. I will let you get started.
Fantastic. And good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Sally was mentioning, we're going to spend today talking about vegetables. It seems like one of the most common questions I get at the plant clinic these days are, is it too early to plant this? Is it too late to plant that? Can I start this planting now, or do I need to wait on that? And so I want to really focus my attention on what you can go out and do today to do this weekend and everything. And that's kind of it's a little more it's a little trickier than you might think, because again, our weather has been like crazy as it seems to always be, where it was 70, 75 degrees and warm and sunny in the first half of March. And then it's been kind of back to sort of the cold, cloudy, and wet here in the latter part of March and starting out to April. So as Sally mentioned, I will be inviting questions. So I've got a fairly brief presentation this afternoon, talk about vegetables. So I'll take a break halfway between after we talk about vegetables and before we get into pest management. So we'll take a few questions then, cover some pest issues, and then have plenty of time for more of your questions. So questions, comments, any ideas, anything you want to share with us pertaining to vegetable gardening, please send us that message through your chat box. So kind of just kicking things off, we look at vegetables and two really big broad categories. A lot of the things that we think about as our vegetable garden, like you see here, the cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, corn, peppers, all that kind of stuff. Those are warm season vegetables and herbs. And as you can see on my slideshow there, their happy places more like 70 to 90 degrees. We are still experiencing nighttime temperatures down in the 30s, in the upper 30s. So it is definitely too early to be putting these plants outside. So what I'm focusing on, and there's many, many, many choices and opportunities for this, are really the cool season vegetables. These vegetables love temperatures when it's right at 50 to 75 degrees. So the cool, moist conditions we're having right now are ideal, perfect conditions for growing things like broccoli, cabbage, lettuce, peas, cilantro, parsley, and the list goes on, chives, on and on and on. So there's just tons of things that we can get out and plant right now. These plants will even tolerate a light frost. So if temperatures were to drop down and even go into the low 30s or below 30, these plants are absolutely fine. This is a picture from a vegetable garden that we have here at the Fair Oaks store, and you can't really see it, but back here, this parsley and everything is here. It wintered right over, went through the winter and stuff, so they're just totally fine with that. So lots of stuff that you can get started on now, but you do need to be aware what that is. So our average frost date for right here, where I am at the Fair Oaks location, We tend to use April 20. That will vary depending on exactly where you are. And if you want that information, the best thing I can tell you is if you just go on the internet, you can do a search of frost date by zip code and it will come up. I think it's National Gardening Association, if I recall correctly, has a website where you can just plug in your zip code. It will tell you what your average frost date is based on where you are located. And I emphasize that is an average. That means it's kind of 50-50 chance. So back to what I'm saying, right now, today we're talking about stuff that you can go out and plant now today, but as we discuss or look at some of the warm season stuff, we want to wait till usually even a little bit later than that average frost date. But that's the thing. So we're talking mostly about cool season vegetables. And again, there's just tons and tons of stuff that we can use to do that. Now, the other thing that I will say is talking about either growing from transplants, which are like these little starter plants that you can buy in a market pack or, a 2 or 3 inch pot or something. If you're buying these transplants, the nice thing about that is they're already 6 or 8 weeks old. And so that gives you a head start on the gardening season. And a lot of us, if you're small gardening in a small scale or you're just gardening in containers, the ease and efficiency, the success rate, getting that head start on there, growing from transplants is definitely your way to go. But there's still a lot of things that we can grow from direct seed. So in there, when I see root crops, things like carrots and radish, they don't really like to be disrupted with transplanting. So if I wanted to grow those, I would be seeding them out in my garden, and you could do that today. You could have done it last week or the week before. These are plants, again, that do well with cool temperatures. Things like the leafy greens, which could be lettuce, chard, kale, mustard greens. These all grow pretty rapidly. And again, they're frost tolerant, and you can just buy a package of seeds and put them in there. So a nice thing when you're growing from seed is they're less expensive. So it's a more economical option, and sometimes gives you options of different varieties that may not be available as transplants. But again, the transplants really give you that immediate gratification, give you that head start, which means we get closer to our harvest on there. As an example, if I was out planting my garden today or this weekend, like I'm encouraging you to do, some of the plants that form a head, and here what we're looking at, this is broccoli back in here, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Some of these vegetables take longer to develop. So they need several weeks to develop these heads on them, where we're eating like a head of cabbage or the flowers, basically the flower buds of cauliflower, broccoli. The flip side to this I'm talking about is, so what they don't like is they don't like hot temperatures. So by, let's say, late June, when we're starting to hit those upper 80s and 90 degrees, these plants start to bolt. They start to go to flower. They start to get bitter tasting. They get tough. So what we're doing is we're trying to capture this little season between now and the later part of July or later part of June. So with that in mind, if it's a plant that's going to need a longer growing season, I definitely am going to tell you, get the transplants. If it's something that grows quickly, like the greens, like I said, this could be spinach, lettuce, chard, collards, the list goes on. Those you can easily start from seed. So again, it just depends on what you're growing. This is an example of direct, or these are transplants they're put in. So you see this leaf lettuce. These plants are spaced out, giving them room to grow and develop. And you can see in the background what we're looking for as our end result. So we're trying to get these from transplant to harvest. And because lettuce goes so quickly, we have ample time to do that. This is Swiss chard growing in an earth box in a container. They are, this is a amazingly resilient plant. Again, they are sometimes a little slow to get started. So I started here with just transplants. You can see a little 6-pack, put them in there. And these, again, will be ready to eat definitely before we get into the summer months. This would be where I just direct sowed a package of salad greens right into a window box. Here I just took, you can buy seeds that come in a salad mix of mixed greens that's in there, sprinkled it in there and was able just, you can see how they're not nicely spaced. They're just kind of crammed in together. And as they're still baby greens, I just go in with some scissors, cut them off, and insto presto, kind of have a fresh salad to put on the table. So either way, I'm just trying to put it out there and say, you have these options that are available to you. So if you really, want to get good produce, get good production, which is the whole point of this thing, your plant growth, your success, everything you see going on in your garden really is done in partnership with having really good soil conditions. And when we're growing a vegetable garden, where we are trying to maximize production, where we may be rotating between different crops, trying to get multiple seasons out of it, we're putting greater demands on that soil. And so it's worthwhile to put greater effort into managing it. So I do want to take just a couple minutes here to talk a little bit about soil preparation, and then we'll stop for some questions. So growing good soil in a natural system, everything cycles, right? All the nutrients are cycling, the organic matter is cycling, water is cycling. Natural cycles basically replenish themselves as they would in a normal environment. So what my little diagram here is just trying to show, if you look at plants, and this would be, I've got tree and pasture and meadow and stuff, but what plants are doing in a very fundamental way is they are really effective at taking carbon out of the atmosphere, fixing it through photosynthesis, putting it down into the soil. And as they put it into the soil, they're feeding all the biology, all the microbes, all the life that lives in the ground. And as they are feeding on that carbon that's provided by the plant, they are in turn releasing minerals back to supporting the plant. So this is what I'm saying, the natural cycling of material that goes through. In an urban environment or in a garden environment, that cycle is disrupted. And so sometimes we have to put more effort into keeping that going. So this gets back to what I'm talking about, feeding the soil. The soil is just teeming with life. I mean, there's more life below the ground than there is above the ground. It's just generally really, really small, and we're not able to see it. So this is what I like, this little diagram that said, hey, if I took a square meter of soil, I might have one animal living on that square meter of soil, one vertebrate animal that we can see. But for every animal that we can see, there might be 100 slugs and snails in there, worms, earthworms, the insects that are in there. Then we start getting down into the microscopic level and even below that down to things like the nematodes, the protozoa. So you start looking this, you say, when we get down to things like the bacteria, the actinomycetes that are in the soil, the microbes that are there, the fungi, now I'm at a point where I have like 1,000,000 times more than I did even at the mites, and that's 100,000 times more than it's up there. So all these numbers, I'm just really trying to emphasize that the soil is a whole ecology in and of itself. Many of these little critters that are in the soil are preying on each other, helping to maintain healthy biology that's in there. The other thing that they're doing is they're shredding organic matter. So we're in this top half of the pyramid, all the way down to like the springtails and stuff, leaf material that drops to the ground, manures, the stuff that drops into the ground. They are shredding that. They're digesting it, shredding it down to smaller and smaller pieces. So as they get small enough, then the bacteria and the fungi can start breaking that down. And then as they're doing that, they're building the soil, they're improving the structure of the soil. They are also releasing those nutrients back to our plants. And that's basically what we really want to happen. And we keep that cycle going. So that's the importance of keeping organic matter in the soil, getting compost in the ground. So regardless of what your environment is, and most of us are dealing with heavy clay soil, but this could be a raised vegetable garden bed, it could be a heavy clay that you're working with. my answer is usually going to be just add organic matter to it. And within that, there's a huge bunch of select options and selections that are out there. So if you were to come into Merrifield Garden Center and I take people over to where the checkout is and I look at the different soil amendments, there's probably 10 or 12 different options on there. There's composted cow manure, there's composted lobster and shellfish, there's I already said compost manure, mushroom compost, leaf mold, composted aged bark, all these different things are all good. They all have their qualities, but the one that I rely on, because I've had so much good success in my own gardening and I like to recommend, is this bumper crop. And it's a blended product. It's not just mushroom compost or just composted yard waste or just composted manure. It's a blend and it has all this stuff in it. So if you look at this list of worm castings, crab shells, lobster shells, kelp meal, aged bark, dehydrated manure, you can read it yourself. It's adjusted with lime. They also put a mycorrhizal supplement, which are fungi that live in the soil and help in this process of transporting nutrients from the soil to the plant. So they have taken all these wonderful things and blended it together. So it really is, it's certified organic there. This is the one that's kind of my go-to product for this application. Of course, there's always different options, and it's like cooking. There's always different recipes and different ways to look at it, but that's the one that I like to look at and recommend most often. So I'm going to take a little break right now, see if you have any questions, comments. I want to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page of what we can plant, how to get started. And then I still have a few comments to make as far as how we're going to manage potential pests in the garden.
All right, David, we have a couple of questions that have come in. Okay, yeah, so we have the first question, we have a couple people asking this, is when you're growing in containers, what soil do you use? Would you use that bumper crop or would you use something else?
What I use, and I just feel like I've had really great success with this, is I take the Merrifield potting mix and blend it with bumper crop. So I'm somewhere in the range of I'm going to say 2/3 Merrifield potting mix and about 1/3 bumper crop. That's worked for me. I've been doing this for about the past 3 years. I just started getting all my containers ready on Monday, but then it's raining nonstop, but I'm going to get them planted here any day now.
Would you alter that if you were planting seeds as opposed to transplants?
No, that will work either way.
Okay.
One of the things I'll say, and that's definitely just about containers, when we start talking about like raised beds, I have a lot of times people come in with raised beds, just the economy and expense of this doesn't work. And then I start switching over to bulk materials. So you'll get different answers from me and at different times, different applications. But like people know I'm a fan of the Earthbox. So that's my primary go-to. And I use that mix of Merrifield potting mix and the bumper crop.
Okay. Our next two questions, we have one about seed germination and another one about vegetable selection. So do you want me to hit those now or?
Oh, sure.
Potting soil would be safe to use with edible veggies. That's the question. Sorry, that one just came in about soil.
So we have a lot of organic options that are in there if that's something that's important to you. The potting mix really, none of the potting mixes that we sell have any kind of hazardous material in it or toxic material. There are some potting mixes that also have insecticides in it, but we don't deal with or sell those products. Like I said, then to me, whether you choose to follow organic practices or conventional practices, that's kind of up to you. So a lot of times, just as an example, we sell Pro Mix. They have a Pro Mix vegetable and herb, which has an organic fertilizer mixed into it, or the traditional just called Pro Mix Premium, which has a conventional slow release fertilizer mixed into it. But none of these things have any kind of insecticides or pesticides in it.
Gotcha. Okay. Next question. My lettuce germinated a couple of weeks ago, but my kale did not. Is kale germination really that different from that of lettuce? Should he be worried?
So kale is slower than lettuce. That's one of the reasons I keep pushing lettuce out there because it's delicious, it's wonderful, and it's really quick and easy. Kale is slower, but if you're telling me it's 2 weeks, I would expect to see kale have germinated by this point in time. Um, you might even just poke around in there a little bit and see what's going on. The germination is dictated by temperature and moisture. So we want to make sure that your media is staying above 50 degrees, ideally even maybe closer to 60 degrees, and it needs to be consistently moist. So when I'm doing my seeds, if it's indoors, that's saying, I want to keep them misted so that media stays moist. Outdoors, of course, we've had, tons of rain recently, but it might be a little slow just because the temperatures have also been cool.
Okay. If you're getting to plants, we've got questions on tomatoes and selection of attractive vegetables. We just had a question about reusing soil in the pot from the previous year.
Yeah. Um,
That's why I'm like, if we want to stick with soil, if you're covering vegetables, we may want to save the tomato questions for later. So,
well, since you brought it up, I have a guest visitor today.
the tomatoes are in.
So my deal is, like if you want to grow tomatoes, you could start seeds indoors. Now, it's too early for them to go outside, but some of these crops, like if you want to grow peppers, tomatoes, and that kind of thing, and you start your own transplants, growing them indoors, we still have time to do that. And I would just give you the green light. Go ahead and get started on that. The thing is, we're just not ready to leave them outside. We really want our nighttime temperature staying above 50. So for people that are just really anxious and want to get started, we do, I don't know about all stores, but the Fair Oaks location, we've got some tomatoes in. You can check on that. But
That's what we have. Someone who said they have their tomatoes already. They're in a container. Can they leave them inside in a spot with good light until they're okay to plant?
yeah, that's what you have to do. You got to be prepared to move them back and forth, protect them from the cold nights, or if you've got a nice sunny spot in the window, just keep them inside. So that's what I'm saying. You just can't go outdoors with them. The other thing I want to say regarding reusing potting mix, 100%. I like to reuse it. I kind of refurbish it. So what I'll do is year to year, I'll mix my favorite, the bumper crop. I'll put, a couple inches, maybe 3 inches of bumper crop in there, stir it in with the old soil to kind of rejuvenate and reuse it. After about 3 years, I'm generally at about that 3 year point. I'm ready to dump it and do a total remix.
Gotcha. Okay. Alrighty, we answered the tomato question. Okay, next question. I would enjoy using veggies as color throughout my garden, so I'm okay with them bolting. Tomatoes, purples of chard. Can you advise on some more colorful vegetable foliage or flowers? I would do the rainbow chard.
Yeah, so I was going to say that rainbow chard. I love Swiss chard, but also I love the beauty of the stems. I grew one last year. I think they called it peppermint or candy stripe, and it had like red and white stripes in there. The rainbow ones you've seen have the different foliage in there. I confess I've never grown bok choy, but I just grabbed it because I thought it was so pretty. This is bok choy right here with this. They have the green leaf, but then I just kind of was going with the red theme out here, and so I grabbed that one. Um, Now I'm glad to see some of these growers, they're doing these vegetable mixes like this. So you can even buy this, and there's seed packets. I didn't bring them in. Again, like you can probably see right in here. So yeah, most of the greens are absolutely beautiful. A lot of these plants, if you let them, what we call bolt, if you let them go to seed, the things that are in the mustard family, they will send a seed spike up. Like if you have ornamental kale in your garden, it is flowering now and will send these spikes, usually bright yellow blossoms on it. A lot of that stuff that we left in the vegetable garden last fall is blooming. It's in bloom today with bright yellow flowers, and that's great. That attracts butterflies and stuff like that. So by all means do that. I didn't talk too much about some of the herbs in here, but chives get beautiful flowers, little purple flowers. They will seed about and start spreading. Even garlic, which again has beautiful seed heads and flower heads coming up in the lily family. So Yeah, I'm all about it, and every garden I have, I sprinkle, fennel or dill into the seed mix just for the butterflies.
That's great. Um, okay, next question. This is about tomatoes again. My tomatoes grow well, but no matter what type, they're not very sweet, even when the seeds are labeled as producing a very sweet tomato. What am I doing wrong?
I don't know. I'm not even sure that there's something that you're doing wrong. I will say I think tomatoes tend to have, or when they're actually grown in soil, when they're grown in the ground in a vegetable garden, to me they're a little more flavorful that way than when they're grown in pots or containers. We've all had vegetables, we've all had hydroponically grown produce, and it's just not as flavorful as one that's grown kind of under a conventional farming system. So I would say if you're growing in pots, try mixing some of that bumper crop in to make sure we have complete balanced nutrition in there. Uh, More sun is better for them because again, that's where they're going to develop, store the carbohydrates, get the sweetness. Um, so try playing around with your soil mix. That's the only thing I can offer up there.
Okay. Next question. Do you pinch back tomato and pepper plants as they are growing?
So we're going to talk about summer vegetables when the time comes,
Okay.
but I will say real quickly with tomatoes, of because this was done a long time ago. USDA actually researched this, so I've got a solid answer on. So tomatoes a vine, right? And you get eventually, like in here, you'll get shoots developing between this stem and so on. If you pinch those out and kind of train this to keep it on one main vine, you get larger tomatoes. But if you allow those shoots to develop and it gets a little bushier, you get a higher yield, you get more pounds, but they tend to be smaller. So you can select a little bit if you want to go for just like one big juicy tomato, or if you just want to go for maximum production. If you want one big juicy tomato, pinch them. If you're trying to maximize production, don't pinch them.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, this is a just we can probably address this quickly. What are the names of the flowers behind and beside you? I don't know all of them. I see Columbine, but I don't know the others.
Yeah, you see
Point of that real
Columbine,
quick.
which I just had to put up there, the blue and the red.
That's really pretty. Yeah.
I love Columbine, and they're not blooming in your garden, but they're blooming here at the garden center because they're in there. Snapdragons, which are looking a little fuzzy. Again,
Yep. Okay.
snapdragons, cool weather plant. They slow down on you in the summer, but just like the cool season veggies we're talking about, snapdragon is that cool weather plant. And if you have a mild winter, like we did this year, sometimes they'll even survive or overwinter for you. And the shrubs, and that's why I do this. I decorate because I like shrubs. Laura petalum. Again, this comes in from the growers like that. It's a little too early to see this in your garden. Laura petalum, if you're down south, like you probably have at Sally at Florida, where it's
Yes.
actually an evergreen. For us,
Yep.
it tends to shed its leaves, but you would not see it this full and bushy there. And
Yeah.
again,
People use it as hedges. I think I've seen it a lot all over the place. I didn't know what it was though.
this is a personal favorite of mine. I have that in my garden. It's native to the southeastern US, not necessarily Virginia, but that's Fothergilla, member of the hazel family. The flowers don't have petals. Looks like a little bottle brush plant, just stamens, and they're fragrant. They are budding up, but would not actually be blooming in your garden. And again, Spirea, there's so many different varieties now that even have both colorful leaves as well as colorful foliage. So again, our garden centers, we're loaded up with all this stuff. So come see us for inspiration. Sally, let me look at a couple little pest things because I prepared those slides. This will be quick. And then I think we'll still have time for some questions.
Sounds good.
Where did I leave off with the bumper crop? Because this is plant clinic, I got to talk about some of the pest issues that can occur. As I said, when we're talking about these plants that you can grow right now, we talked about this several times: cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage. These are all in the mustard family or cruciferous family. Easy to grow. delicious, wonderful, nutritious. I just learned that broccoli has got a lot of protein in there as well. Uh, the one thing that will happen to us, and this is because you can see tomatoes in the background back here. So I'm trying to think. This picture is probably taken in late May or June, where our cool season crops are, I'm gonna say June, cool season crops are coming in and it's starting to overlap with some of our summer crops. But they are susceptible, what's called a cabbage worm. When it was nice out in early March, those first couple weeks, I started seeing these white butterflies. They're very common. It's just called a cabbage white, uh, buzzing around. I thought people, oh, everybody's like so happy to see the butterflies. No, what they're out is they lay their eggs on plants in the crucifery family, and then those caterpillars hatch like this and will just devour it. They eat it really quickly. They're extremely well camouflaged. They're hard to spot. But this is the one pest you need to keep an eye on with these in your garden. You have options available to you if these floating row covers work for you. Now, these are beans. This is a summer picture. But I love using this floating row cover because you're just putting a very lightweight mesh over top of your plants. That shelters and protects them from insects, so we're not having to use any kind of insecticide whatsoever. And what I'm showing here, the beans here starting to blossom. So when it's time for pollination, I pull them back. But when I think about the plants we're growing, most of our cool season plants, we're not really growing a fruit. We don't need the pollination. So growing them under a blanket is very effective and easy. Uh, that works better in large gardens. What I rely on, because I'm a small container kind of vegetable gardener, um, is this product here. It's called Spinosad. Spinosad's been around for probably 25 years. It just isn't quite as well known as some of the older products, but Spinosad is 100% organic. It's formed by bacteria in the soil. It was discovered, so it's not genetically modified or synthesized. It's a natural product that was occurring in the soil. They found it, and it's very effective on the control of thrips, very effective on the control of cabbage worms, and it works on mites and a host of other insects. So what I do is I'm constantly monitoring, watching. When I start to see the little holes in the leaf, or I see the little feces, or find the cabbage worm, that tells me I need to spray them. It has a residual life of about 5 days, maybe 7 days if you're lucky. So it's something you do have to kind of eye on and watch as you use. Just because it's natural and organic doesn't mean that it's harmless. This can be toxic to bees. So if your plants are flowering and it's the middle of the day, bees are active, that's not a good time to be spraying it. Once the material dries, then it has very little residual impact on bees. So just that's one of the reasons we like to do this early in the morning before any pollinators, but really bees, before bees are out and active. This particular one is also blended with an insecticidal soap, one of our mildest natural products. It gives us a quick kill on contact for things like aphids and such. So blending the two together gives me the best results. Don't get hung up again. This is the Bonide version. Fertilome makes one, Natural Guard makes one. This is not like exclusive product. I show these things, but then when you come in, based on what's available, the container might look different. But that's something we look out for on those kind of plants. I've talked a lot about lettuce and some of these leafy greens. Our nemesis here on lettuce really might be slugs. Again, very easy to grow, but slugs will get in there, especially now with this kind of wet weather. I'm already seeing them active in the garden. I saw my first samples just last week. And when that is an issue, I like to use Sluggo, which again is an organic, pet-friendly, people-friendly kind of product. It's a little bait. Literally, they're tiny, tiny little pieces of pasta that is blended with iron phosphate. Iron phosphate is toxic to slugs and snails, harmless to people and pets. So this is just sprinkled out a little bit on the ground, and when the slugs come out looking for a meal, they steal that little piece of pasta, and it gets that under control pretty effectively. So both these products can be used in vegetable gardens. Like I said, warm season veggies, we're gonna wait. You can start some seeds on that indoors. All the same ideas I talked about work. Same with these. If I'm growing something like cucumbers, squash, watermelons, they grow so quickly and easily. I'll just direct sow them into the ground when we get closer, like May with warmer temperatures. If you want to start some seeds inside on tomatoes and peppers, eggplants, we can do that now. Just a little inspiration. So this is a garden, probably I'm thinking this is Peggy's garden, taken in about June from the looks at it. So your garden changes over time. That's true with your vegetables. And again, these dates and stuff I'm talking to you about, this is when you begin planting. Somebody's asking, hey, what can I do to bring beauty into my garden? Well, Peg's master that. Look at these chives, nasturtium, bring the flowers, again, some mustard greens in there, mix with different herbs. This again, giving you inspiration. Gardens don't have to be just separated out by themselves. They can be incorporated other ornamental plants. This was out Bunny Mellon's garden, and you look in here and you start to see this is Swiss chard, that Ruby Lights one with colorful leaves in there. These being artichokes that are in there. This is lettuce. You can't hardly see it, but this is lettuce that's bolted. So these are now, like we were talking about, these are the flowers coming up. That lettuce is no longer as tender for use in a vegetable garden, but hey, it's still adding attraction value flowers that are in there. So mix it up. It's always changing. Have fun with it. And that was my message for today. Now we've got another 10 minutes to talk about what's on your mind.
All righty, everybody, please feel free to send in any questions you have. We've got a couple, so we'll start with those and see if any more come in. I love beets, but I don't have much luck growing them. Do you have any tips for growing beets? I'm glad she likes beets. I'm not a fan of beets.
I love beets. I've been binging on beets, Sally. I've had beets 3 times a
It's
week.
one of the only
last 3
vegetables I
weeks.
can't, I'll eat anything, but beets is like on my no list. But I'm
My
glad
advice,
there are people that love them.
go to Trader Joe's and buy the steamed beets that come in a little package. They're grown, they're steamed, they're peeled. That's the way I do it. Beets are not the easiest thing to grow in our climate. Again, they a lot of these root crops, and this would be the same thing with carrots and so on. They really like a long, cool growing season. And what we have is, like I said, we're trying to catch a little bit of a season right now before it gets hot in June. Um, I think you can have a little better success growing them as a fall crop. So let's say I start them in late August and then let them go into the fall and try for winter harvest. I don't think you're ever going to grow beets that are quite as good as what you'll get from a little bit cooler climates. But the greens, of course, those you also have available to you. So it's worth growing just to have your own fresh produce, but it's just not gonna do as well here as it might in other climates.
I didn't realize that Virginia was actually a little bit warm for that. That's good to know. That's
But we
interesting.
can grow them. They're just not gonna
Yes.
be the big, beautiful ones like you see at the grocers. Yeah.
Gotcha. Like the steamed beets from Trader Joe's. All right, next question. Sorry. Okay. My grape tomatoes were grown in containers and developed black spots. Was the soil too moist?
No, tomatoes have entire books written on the diseases that affect tomatoes. And again, in our environment, as you go into the summer and the amount of moisture, the heat, the humidity, the moisture, we do deal a lot with disease issues. I would tell you, I think it's really, really important that they're spread out, they have good air circulation. If we cram plants together and we don't allow good air circulation, air movement around, then it's real easy for these pathogens to spread, hard to control. So I'm a believer in getting the hybrid disease resistant varieties. A lot of us like growing heirlooms, but I've been through all that, and there is something to be said about hybrid vigor. So I want to select disease resistant varieties, keep them off the ground up in tomato cages. I like to keep the ground mulched to reduce splashing, try to keep the leaves dry. You just do all the best cultural steps you possibly can. And then if you encounter a disease problem, we have to consider if you want to intervene with a fungicide or not.
Okay. All right, next question. Ah, do you have a chart of when certain flowers, okay, this may not be specifically for vegetables. I'm realizing as I read this. Do you have a chart of when certain flowers come up through spring, summer, and fall? Do we have like at least like do we have a vegetable guide, or do you have any resources you recommend for that?
I don't know about vegetables. We have done flower charts. We did a like a kind of flowering calendar of
Yes.
blooms are there. But I think vegetables, we've just put them into two broad categories. I know Sally and I, we've been working on revising a cool season vegetable guide,
Yes.
and our to-do list is to do a warm season vegetable guide. So I don't know if I have anything right now today, but we are working on that.
Yeah, I just think I'm thinking of Louis' class that he does, where he covers like walking through the basically how spring blooms from start to finish. He does that for garden clubs occasionally, but we don't have anything I think currently in print. But contact us if you have questions about anything specific. Next question. Which part, okay, sorry, I can't talk. Which parsley do the insects like? I thought butterflies like parsley.
They do, and when they get in here and start feeding on parsley, we call it a parsley worm. You know, when they're in a field, we just call it the swallowtail larvae. So, yeah, worm turns into a swallowtail butterfly, and they will go after really, you know, and anything in that carrot family. So, a lot of times they said dill, fennel, parsley. That is a host plant for them. So I just like to plant enough of it that we can share with the butterflies. But they will see the real pretty larvae, the caterpillars in there. They've got sort of yellow or orange markings on them. If you see them, just share with them. But yeah, I think they actually, and this might be just in my mind, I think they go after the flat parsley like this one a little bit more than the curled parsley, which I have over here. But they're not that picky. You put parsley out, they will find it.
Yes. All right, next question. The weeds get so aggressive throughout the summer. I obviously don't want to use chemicals in the vegetable garden. Do you have effective approaches to keep weeds under control?
Yeah, so that's the biggest issue as far as vegetables go. I mean, is the weed management that's in there. Couple things I'll say is if you're starting a new garden bed, uh, you need to till and cultivate the soil, get the organic matter in there, and when you do that, you're disturbing the ground and you're turning up a lot of weeds that are in there. So that's almost inevitable. I am a big fan of mulching that ground to help reduce weeds. In some applications, it's more of a traditional row type garden. My favorite is I would use just newsprint, like 1 or 2 layers thick of newsprint with straw on top of it. Doesn't eliminate weeds, but it helped tremendously, and that usually lasts through a season. If you have an established garden with good healthy soil, the less disturbance we do, kind of a no-till practice, the better off we are. Because every time we disturb that soil, we're bringing a fresh crop of weed seeds in it, because the seeds can live for years in there. So I found, in my current residence, I've been there for 20 years now. So the less disturbance I do, the better. And then really weeds become pretty manageable. So because we're just talking about hand weeding. So minimize disruption, keeping the soil covered so we don't have any exposed seed, and that means it's either covered with plants or it's covered with mulch, and you're still going to have some hand weeding that goes with it.
Okay. All righty, next question, and this is our last one. Is it normal for tomato seedlings to have purple coloration on the bottom of the leaves? Mine seem to turn a normal color once they go out in the garden and get more nutrients. Is there anything during the seed starting process before they go in the garden that you recommend to improve this coloration issue?
A lot of times that is associated with a phosphorus deficiency. So it could be nutritional related that's in there. It sounds like they're indoors. Sometimes I'll see that in reaction to cold temperatures. But with seedlings, of course, we want to be kind of gentle or easy on the fertilizer with it. So I usually just taking a fertilizer and diluting it, using it about 1/4 of the recommended rate on whatever product you're using. Most of the potting mixes now come with things like worm castings or something mixed into it. So I love fish emulsion, but that can be a little bit smelly to use in the door inside. Nice thing with worm castings is they basically don't have any odor to it. So we have some organic options that are out there. Maybe mix a little bit of that in with your seed starting mix. Because it sounds like once you get them outside, they probably have that phosphorus available to them and they correct themselves.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, that's our last question, David, and we're right at 2:45, so that's right on time.
Perfect.
All right. Just notes, reminders for everybody. If you think of any questions after the class, please feel free to contact us, call your store, come visit us as always. The recording will be available tomorrow around lunchtime on our YouTube channel. And David, do you want to wrap up with anything before we conclude?
No, nothing special. Just that, have fun with it all. Again, keep in mind, you look at your weather forecast, we're still having temperatures in the 30s. So we have a lot of cool season flowers and trees and shrubs and all that stuff that we're pretty good to go on. But always ask if you have any questions. Some of this stuff we're putting out there, we're saying like geraniums, hey, we have them for sale, but be ready to protect them if the temperatures get cold.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much, David. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next class. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.